So now, Apple had two choices on how to transform this technology into a product. 1. Enlarge the already successful iPod into a phone, or 2. Shrink macOS down into a phone using Fingerworks touch technology. Nobody knew which would work best, so Steve let both ideas run. The iPod enlarging team was led by Tony Fadell, and the multi-touch macOS team was led by Scott Forstall. Forstall's team was seen as the underdogs. After all, Tony Fadell had helped push millions of iPod sales and was also working on two smash hits, the iPod Nano and the iPod Video. The battle had begun. Neither team was allowed to know what each other was doing. In fact, the hardware guys weren't allowed to see any software, and the software guys weren't allowed to see any hardware. Hardly anyone working on the phone at Apple knew what the device was going to look like until the keynote, and they weren't given a solid date for that either. During the stress, some members would quit, and others would be fired. At one point, Phil Schiller, head of marketing, had had enough and thought that both projects should be scrapped. An Apple phone with a BlackBerry-style keyboard seemed like the most sensible option. While these projects were going, top Apple executives convinced Jobs that something needed to be done about encroaching MP3-capable mobile phone sales, and quickly. Jobs agreed to partner with Motorola, the coolest phone company at the time, with their thin Razr phone. They would make an iTunes phone. The idea was people would try out iTunes on the phone and then hopefully go off and buy an iPod. Apple would have no involvement in the hardware, only focusing on iTunes integration. The result was the Motorola Rocker. Already outdated on release, the thing just sucked.
I go there and I just resume my music right back to where it was. Well, I was supposed to resume my music right back to where it was. I hit the wrong button. But you can resume your music right back to where it was if you hit the right button.
The Rocker was so bad that it was soon being returned at a rate of 6 times higher than the industry average. Consumers were expecting something big from Apple, and this wasn't it. After the Motorola failure, Jobs returned his attention back to the iPod phone, which was Tony Fadell's team, as it was the safer option. He still did leave the Touch macOS team led by Scott Forstall to continue. Tony's team tried a plethora of designs, one of which was similar to an iPod Video, but with a phone mode. If you wanted music, it would behave like a regular iPod with touch controls for play, pause, etc. around a scroll wheel. When you needed to dial a number, you would switch it into phone mode and the device would behave like a rotary phone. It wasn't perfect, but Jobs still insisted that the idea could work. Nobody within Apple really knew what this new device was. The iPod team saw it as another portable accessory like the iPod, so software wasn't important. The Touch macOS team, on the other hand, saw it as a fully fledged, multi-touch computer that fit in your hand. Tony Fadell and his team were certain that this new phone should run a beefed-up version of iPod software, while Scott Forstall and his team thought a shrunken-down version of macOS would be better. They theorized that mobile chip technology had become powerful enough to run a version of macOS. It was juddery at first, but soon they managed to get scrolling to work smoothly on a compact version of macOS. And from this point, it was decided that this would be the way to go. The shrunken down version of macOS would become known as iOS, and soon, Tony Fadell's iPod phone idea would be abandoned, and all efforts would be focused on iOS.